Hello and welcome to my review of Alien Isolation. Now, before we get started, I want to preface that I am not a gamer. I have played a variety of games in my life, but I do not consider myself too well versed in the medium. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. That being said, um, this is one of the best games I have ever played. And this comes from both a subjective as well as objective perspective. That, however, does not mean that this is a flawless game. Since this is a game review, I want to tackle this in a few specific segments: gameplay and immersion, the AI of the game, the narrative, and some of my favorite and least favorite parts of the game. Gameway, Gameplay wise, I never really had much issue with the game. It all ran relatively smooth, and for being nearly 10 years old, the game looks fantastic. I spent so long investigating every little thing that I could, and I'm honestly blown away with how much of Sebastopol Station we actually got to explore. Now, if I did have to give the gameplay one criticism, it is that some of the gameplay feels repetitive, and this really only extends to things like hacking, using the generators, or cutting a door open. Well, I'll admit there are some intense moments involving hacking with a xenomorph around. Some of these smaller, more menial tasks felt very repetitive to me during the later portions of the game. That being said, I wouldn't levy this as a major criticism by any means. A lot of the gameplay is very engaging throughout, I would say, 90% of the game. Now, this game's strongest point, in my opinion, is its level of immersion. I would play this game for 4 or 5 hours, and it would feel like only an hour's gone by. The atmosphere of Sevastopol Station is captured excellently. The entire station's design, even down to doors, sirens, vents, and other small sounds, feel like they are ripped straight out of the first Alien film. Just about any encounter with a xenomorph is heart pounding and scary. The xenomorph is captured so well, especially from its massive body in scale comparison to humans. Its speed and ferocity is on full display, and it can be terrifying, especially when you are almost at safety and the xenomorph is scrambling towards you before you have a chance to pull anything out. Now, the AI of the xenomorph is what really blew me away. The xenomorph is just not predictable. It makes so many different moves, even when replaying the same level, it's almost incalculable. Another aspect that really steals the show for me is the xenomorph's adaptability. It slowly adapts to the player more and more. Use a flare or noisemaker too many times, and the effect becomes minimal. And this even extends to the flamethrower. After using the flamethrower 5 or 6 times in the same level, the cooldown before the xenomorph returns feels almost non existent. The working Joes are a lot more predictable. However, I feel like this was by design due to them being androids. Overall, the androids' involvement feels like such a double edged sword in this game. On one hand, I really like their use and involvement in the game, but on the other hand, they can feel really annoying or far too overused at times. And an encounter with a synthetic really just isn't the same as with a xenomorph. The narrative was actually the biggest draw in for me personally, as I'm a big fan of the franchise, and the first two films are some of my favorite films out there. Now, unfortunately, I do have to admit that the narrative is not this game's strongest point. I do like the narrative, however, it does remain quite simple. The choice to make Amanda Ripley the protagonist was a very smart choice, in my opinion. We know that Amanda existed due to the scene from Aliens, so seeing her character here allowed for us to explore and experience a character that the films, and I believe most of the extended lore franchise, has not really touched on. Unfortunately, I don't think that they do the best job with her. She isn't a very in depth character, or at least not what I'd hoped for. The plotline of Amanda trying to find out what happened to her mother is only important in, I believe, 3 scenes in the entire game, though I may be misremembering. That being said, I do like the overall narrative with Amanda exploring and trying to leave Sevastopol Station. It's still a fun and fascinating story to follow. My least favorite portion of this game is definitely towards the middle. Just after you make it back on Sevastopol Station, and the main problem becomes the androids. While I do like the aggressive behavior, they just aren't as much fun as a xenomorph, especially coming off the back of one of the best levels where you're trapped in an ejected part of the station with the creature. If I had to highlight the biggest missed opportunity with this part of the game, it is absolutely the room full of androids. Once you enter the room, you see 2 rows of androids on the path to the next door. You must go through. You know for a fact that one, or maybe even all of them, will step down to try to kill you, and you have no choice. Once hitting the unlock button and going down the steps, 2 of the androids started to move towards me. I would have changed this to have maybe had them step down once you're next to them, or even have them step down and grab you from behind after you passed them. I think that would have been much more terrifying than just having them meet you at the end of the steps. The best portion of this game far outweighs the 3 hours or so of Android slog. I have 3 levels in particular that really kept me engaged and kept my heart rate up almost the entire time. The first is the previously mentioned segment where you acquire the flamethrower and you go to actually try to kill the alien. However, you're shot off Sevastopol Station and forced to hide from the xenomorph, as well as try to make your way back to Sevastopol. The betrayal was harsh, the entire level was non-stop exciting, not to mention the claustrophobic feeling being trapped with the xenomorph in space. The second level I want to bring attention to is the xenomorph nest. The reveal was admittedly very predictable, but I still had a lot of fun with this level, exploring the nest, encountering multiple xenomorphs as well as face huggers. It can feel overwhelming in a very good way. It was very fun, a nice change of pace, and especially coming off being chased by androids while trying to make it to the Apollo core. The final section of the game that I greatly enjoyed was the fake out ending. You did it. You're secure in the airlock chamber. You're about to go back to the Torrens. You just need to change. Upon grabbing the helmet, 2 drops fall on the glass. At first, I thought this was Amanda crying because she can finally leave this hell, this nightmare. But then more drops fall, too many to be tears. She's attacked from above and falls down a vent, falling from her freedom. You wake up cocooned to the wall, surrounded by eggs. This was honestly a really incredible sequence, and you need to hurry and make your way through the station that is falling apart piece by piece. The train portion was especially fun. Now, aside from the first train, the others were a little bit more predictable, but I do think that this functions very well as some fantastic jump scares, especially in comparison to different things we've had before in the game. This was very new and very exciting, especially this late in the game. Now, this does bring me to the end of the game. I don't think the game has the best ending. The final portion outside of Sevastopol is fun, and I actually like just about all of the portions outside of Sevastopol. Now, the issue is less with Sevastopol and more so once we arrive back on the Taurens, where I start to have real issue. The reveal of the Xenomorph being aboard the Taurens is very obvious. The game doesn't allow you to take off your suit, and Verlaine doesn't respond at all. This is coupled with a mediocre quick time event and an underexplored final scene. I honestly would have rather seen Amanda die at the end of this game, giving a dark end to her character and implying that Weyland Yutani covered up and lied to Ellen Ripley in Aliens about the event and fate of her daughter. We could have had the Xenomorph kill her on the Taurens, or even ended with the scene of her body floating in space as we see her light slowly fade out. I don't necessarily mind Amanda being saved, except by who? Does she tell people about Sevastopol? Does she actually live a longer life and Weyland Yutani was telling Ellen Ripley the truth? We don't know. As a whole, this game was great. I don't play video games hardly ever. This was a very nice change of pace for me, especially since I've just been reading manga all the time. I will certainly replay this game someday, as there are a lot of great levels. It was overall a very fun game, and I do recommend it to longtime Alien fans such as myself. I think it does a great job capturing the feeling that the first made the first movie so successful. With this, I do plan to eventually play the Dead Space trilogy. I have heard from 3 people that it's similar to Alien Isolation and that I will likely enjoy it. So I don't know when I'll get around to that, but I will eventually at some point in my life. And I'll probably make a video on it. That's going to be all from me today. Bye, guys.